thanks for coming. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, no,
And appreciate the library for letting me come in and give a little talk on how to raise emotionally strong kids. So for me, it's basically from my own marriage, my own parenting. That's what led me into the path where I'm at now. So backstory was, years ago, I had an alcohol problem and wound up getting sober. And in sobriety, I went to school and went back to college in my 30s and got a phys ed degree and then a master's degree in counseling. So I've had a passion and kind of wanted to learn about mental health and a lot of times for myself and figure out, how to become a healthier person. And as the years went on, I got married and we had our son and bought a house. And so, I'm checking the boxes off, like on the outside, job, decent salary, marriage, house, a great neighborhood, a child now. But, it was really hard for my wife and I when we were raising our son together. So didn't come easy. And that led me into wanting to understand and learn more about how do I become a healthier husband? How do I become a healthier father? Instead of being reactive, or being angry, or, a lot of times for me, it was having feelings, but not voicing them at all. Never really understanding why. And then also being triggered a lot by my son. I've heard of the term, and I like this term, a deeply feeling kid. Some people say highly sensitive person, but deeply feeling my son was. And I've found I had a hard time getting on his level when he had these big emotions that were overtaking him. And
at what age? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So this was when he was born. So this lasted from when he was born until I started getting into what I started practicing in my own life was inner child work and parts work. So parts work is from like internal family systems therapy. Anyway, it's like how we have different parts of us and stuff, but I might share a little bit that later. But yeah, from 0 to 4 was where me and my wife were like, I don't know, like, what are we doing here? Like, trying to be on the same page and struggling, and not really knowing how to handle my son's emotions. So basically, that's what this talk is going to be about. I just shared a little bit about myself, just so that you know what led me down the road to finding the person that I started working with. And I was introduced to something called inner child work. I started studying it on my own, reading up on it, and then trying to apply it in my own life as I continued to work with this person, like a coach of mine. And then after some time, I was introduced to internal family systems. It's a therapeutic model. And yeah, it's been a complete game changer, which is why I like doing these talks at the libraries. Last week, I gave a talk at Mount Pleasant. Yeah. And a couple months back, I gave one at, I can't think of it right now. It'll come to me. But yeah, so game changer for me. And that's why I want to do these talks, because I care deeply about marriages and about parenting. And I don't think many people know what I'm about to talk about, because I know it was new for me. So that's something else I just wanted to hit on. So many times we can get caught up with our kids' behavior. I guess I compare it to like old school style parenting, where we just focus on behavior, and that's what we got to stop. That's what we have to control. That's what needs to get punished. just, a kid's behavior. Because many times parents back in the day, they were trying to teach respect and teach a kid right from wrong. But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of emotional understanding going on with that. So that led to a lot of what we learn now, feelings of abandonment for a child when they felt like they can't go to a parent to discuss what's going on in their inner world, and emotional neglect, which now they learned is just as traumatizing as physical abandonment or physical abuse, anything like that. A lot of what I talk about is kind of wrapped up in what's called complex trauma. So it is similar to PTSD. It has a couple of different elements to it. But basically, it has a lot to do with our emotional development, relational development, growing up in relationship to others in our family. And that goes a long way. So one key piece to remember is there's a lot more going on with our children than the behavior. Because kids don't have the emotional vocabulary, regulation skills yet. So this is all stuff that they have to be modeled and trained and taught to do. And that comes from us. So I do put a lot of responsibility on us as the parents, which is something I try to push back on. But it is on us. It's a lot easier for us as adults to just, tell a kid what we want. Hey, when you shouldn't drink. Alcohol's a problem in the family. You shouldn't drink. Meanwhile, the family's drinking at all types of events, and some overdoing it, right? So, same thing with emotional regulation. In order for me to understand my son and what he needs, I need to go into that world, which is what I'm going to talk about here tonight, and understand what does he need. And why do I find it so challenging to meet those needs? What's blocking me off from being nurturing? Because I do have a lot of love to give. I just don't understand why I can get triggered. And that kind of takes me out of, in my eyes, being a good dad. And my wife was going through something very similar. So with our children, we mostly view tantrums as a problem that needs to be stopped. Tantrums are pretty healthy. Adults have tantrums. We just handle them in different ways, right? We also are capable of having a lot of outlets. So when we're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, we can head to the bar, right? We can scroll on Instagram for a few hours, or check out through TV, or pop a couple of pills or drugs or whatever, right? Shopping. I mean, it's just, gambling, it goes on and on. So that's what happens when we start feeling stressed out and overwhelmed. But children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, 6 years old, they have no idea, right? They're looking up at us like, teach me. Like, how do you handle when you're stressed out and overwhelmed? So having a temper tantrum is part of being their age. And as a parent, it's up to us to understand that, accept it, and be okay with it. So I know that was a big one for me, and that's why I keep it at the top of the list. Because, a tantrum to me was always like, oh no, you can't allow that, right? A tantrum has to be, we have to fix that. Because what I learned was that it's really bothering me, or it's triggering my wife, right? We don't want to hear the loud cries or the screaming. It's doing something to our nervous system that's really bothering me. So like the faster I can get him to calm down, the faster I can calm down. And the more he gets out of control, the more I feel out of control. So a lot of that. Kids have a tendency to show a little attitude or yell, which can be triggering for us. Nervousness, fear. Kids are nervous. Kids are fearful. And sometimes it triggers us. One for me is my son getting older and being scared of the dark. There's an old school part of me or an older part of me, or, what I learn now, a fearful part of me that wants to say, come on, buddy, like you're getting older now. Like none of your friends are worried about the dark anymore. Like come on. And what I've learned was that there's a part of me that had fear growing up as a kid that I never really looked at or dealt with. And I'm worried because of my fear. So I'm really taking my fear, what I worry about him growing up to become a young boy, a young man, or an adult man one day. And my beliefs about all of that are really interfering in that moment. Really what my son needs is for me just to see him, hear him. Dad, I'm scared, don't leave me. I don't have to be sarcastic or, make fun of him or compare him to other kids that don't seem to have a problem with being in the dark. And accept him, love him for where he's at. He needs me because I'm his safety right now. And we can keep working on it together until eventually he works through it. But one of the big ones is, shaming them, punishing them, belittling them, criticizing them, downplaying what, they have going on. It's not teaching a kid to become emotionally strong when they get up. In fact, it's going to do the opposite, which is why I work with a lot of adults as well, is we start sidestepping our emotions. We never learned how to deal with them ourselves from our parents and their parents. And so we don't really know what's going on with inside of us and have a hard time with our own stuff. So the behavior we see is usually, on the surface, underneath, for the most part, is overwhelmed. The kids are overwhelmed. Maybe there's fear there. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they're embarrassed. And we don't have to, pinpoint it and get it exactly right, but we just need to know that there's more going on than just what we see in front of us. So we don't have to jump in to fix them or to punish them. They just kind of need some understanding. So, that's something that is important to remember. So I mentioned the nervous system, emotional regulation, emotional reactions that come from us. So what happens when our child triggers us, we can go into survival mode, a fight or flight reaction we have with our own children. Now, most adults are confused by this because we work so hard to give our children maybe what we didn't get. We love our kids. We want to do right by them. But we can't stop ourselves from behaving and acting in a certain way that's problematic in the family. And usually a lot of times if we yell at our kids, if we just get overwhelmed ourselves and then we feel guilty afterwards for snapping, or maybe we just give some outlandish punishment because we just want to take the relief off of us and put it on them a little bit, but then afterwards we're like, oh, why did I say that? Why did I do? I don't even want to stick to that consequence. It's okay. A lot of it has to do with just us. We're feeling overwhelmed and having a hard time working through it. So when we are in fight mode, we tend to yell, we criticize, we get a little aggressive. When we're in flight mode, we tend to want to avoid our kids. So maybe we hear our kid crying, maybe they're asking for us, and it's like we close the door. It's like, leave me alone. I am so over, what's happening here. I need to check out. Maybe we go into the room and we look for a distraction. That could be TV, that could be the phone. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with if you're married or you have somebody else in the house where you could say, listen, I'm starting to feel a little worked up right now. I'm just going to go take a minute in the room, right? So the kids don't always understand that, but at least they know mom and dad is not storming off, right? They internalize that a little bit more. And then they also still have somebody else in the home that can step in. And then if you do need to go into the room, hopefully we just need just reflect and work on ourselves and some of the things I teach my clients on what to do in those moments, to go back out into the room and then be able to stay grounded or as grounded as possible with them Flight mode for us as adults, we tend to be fearful and anxious, or we just try to stay busy so that we don't really have to deal with what's going on inside of us. So those are two ways. And then there's the freeze response. A lot of us just want, numb out or have this mentality of like, hey, your kid's crying over there. It's like, I don't care. The hard truth is many parents are trying to regulate children while us ourselves as parents are not regulated. So that's going to be the biggest obstacle when we're trying to teach our children, even when we're trying to discipline or give consequences and stay connected to them, is first regulating our own emotions. I've had parents will say, well, how do I do that? It sounds like you're just letting the child do whatever they want. So that's definitely not it. We want to make sure we're taking care of ourselves first, because if we lose ourselves and the volcano starts to erupt, that's where the damage gets done. So the biggest thing is to make sure that we are staying in our lane so that we can then be there with them in the ways they need us.
Yeah, and staying through everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like when you're on an airplane, right? And you do your mask first and then theirs, right? Like kind of like that.
Yeah, that's it. I think that the self-care term, sometimes it turns people off because they're like, self-care is almost selfish, self-centered, narcissistic. I don't buy any of that. I think too many of us aren't really caring for ourselves, especially when we have children. We tend to think that to be the best parent out there is to mean to just do everything for them and not really look at ourselves or take care of ourselves. And that can be take care of ourselves physically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. In our minds, we kind of push all of that aside and we'll say, hey, everything's about my kids. I'll do whatever it takes for them. But what kids really need is a healthy, grounded, again, not perfect, but a healthy enough parent. That's a term that I learned, healthy enough. Because sometimes when I do these talks, it's a little sensitive and parents could take it like, oh man, I'm screwing my kids up and can I change any of this? And there is healing that needs to happen. But I always say none of this is about perfection, because I could leave here right now and my son could trigger me later tonight or tomorrow and I react when I'm like, oh, I stepped into it, So there's no perfectionism. It's healthy enough, right? So I'm on a journey, just like a lot of people, trying to really show up for my son so that he can deal with life, whatever stage he goes through, a little with more strength and a little more resiliency. Because I think in the years past, the old school parenting, nobody ever talked about feelings. Even if something happened in the family, families never really discussed it. Nobody openly was like, hey, what happened yesterday? It was kind of crazy, right? Like, that really scared me when dad came home drunk, or when mom, threw the remote control at us. Like, man, that was...
Especially for guys, too, I think, in the past, it was very suppressed, like, emotions and stuff,
Yeah, that's a good point, because you learn, and I see this a lot. I grew up in the Bronx, too, so I have this Bronx mentality as well. My dad grew up in the Bronx, and from a young age, you're fine. As soon as a child starts crying, it's like dad is like, oh, what's the matter? What are you doing? Like, you're okay. Like, brush it off. It's almost like if we allow our kids to cry, like we're going to produce a kid to grow up to become an adult that's just going to be so fragile in life. But experts now have shown enough research now to prove the opposite. if we can emotionally attune with our sons, especially as fathers, they're going to have a better chance as they get older to be emotionally strong, to be capable of having a healthy, mature relationship, to be able to break a cycle that they would have with their own children one day. So that is real strength to me. Sometimes I view the strength that I used to believe in as a false type of strength, where I just find this type of strength takes a lot of courage, especially as men, to step into this, right? To say, hey, I have feelings too, even though I'm a man, or I have needs that I need to go to my wife and talk to about, right? And keep her on the same page, so I'm not just building resentment because she doesn't know what's going on, or suppressing that anger. Babe, what's going on? You okay? Yeah, I'm just busy at work. I'm tired. Everything's fine. I don't want to be happy all the time. I don't think that's healthy either, but I want to be happy in my marriage, right? Same as my wife. I want to be a healthy parent. And I think all of that is tied in together. So, I do believe in dads playing an important role emotionally. And I feel like I can hear dads pushing back, be like, oh, now I got to do the finances, and I got to be the provider and the protector, and now you're asking me to get in. And it's like, yes, because times have changed, and we learned way too much now of what children need. So you can deny it. You can try to, turn a blind eye to it and act like it's not there. But a lot of children become adults and they are struggling in life, and in all different ways. I don't just, some of my clients, I don't just deal with, alcohol abuse or addiction or anything. It's really just, there's just so many outlets as adults that we struggle with to try to help us cope. So what emotionally strong kids actually need, and what do I mean by that is, I'm not talking about kids that never struggle. I'm not talking about kids who never cry or never fail at anything. Emotionally strong kids are kids who their feelings are safe in the house. So, and what I mean by feeling safe is we don't try to fix them immediately. So when our child is getting overwhelmed and starts getting upset, we don't say, what's the matter? You want to go for ice cream? Now, my son did this. This is one of the times I learned where he was creating something for me and his mother for Christmas time, and it was coming out great, and then he wanted to add something to it, and he started messing it up, and he got really upset. And it was almost like an impulse. Like, the angrier he got, and when the tears started to come, I wanted to say, bud, it looks great. Don't worry about it. Me and mom love it anyway, right? Or if it's something completely different, it'd say, we can order something new on Amazon. Like, there's so many ways as parents that we try to go in and just take our kid out of their feelings and just bring them over here. Instead of stepping into it and saying, that stinks. That's really frustrating because you were working, I saw you. You were working really hard on that, and you were doing such a great job. And you feel like you messed it up, and now you're feeling, talk to me, what's going on, right? So I'm angry, or they're just crying, and then we are responsible as parents to help put words to what's going on with them. Do you feel angry? Things like that. So that was a good one for me when I started learning that, because then me and my wife are picking up on it with each other. I see my wife doing it, like trying to, wow, I don't want him to feel bad, like I don't want him to feel left out, or I don't want him to feel this way. And again, we're not saving kids from everything. We can be an advocate for our child, but we also have to be aware that sometimes we could be overstepping a line where we're doing too much on an emotional level so that they don't feel. And that's how kids work through and start learning themselves how to regulate partly. So, kids who learn, feeling safe. Mistakes are survivable. That's another great one. Mistakes are survivable, meaning like you're allowed to make mistakes. I talk to so many adults, and I can relate to this, where like a mistake when you were younger was met with like a face from a parent, like, what's wrong with you? Or being punished for making a mistake. Again, there was no stepping in and saying, hey, the kid probably feels crappy because of making the mistake. They don't need me to now double down on it and hit them over the head even more. Right now, they probably just need support.
Yeah, it's like you never want your kids to feel like they're stepping on eggshells, thinking, oh, are they gonna say, like, if I mess up, are they gonna say or do something, you know? That's how I feel like I kind of grew up, where it was like, oh, I spilled something on the rug, and it was like, well, you know, met with like a yell, and it was like,
yeah.
And now it's like, I don't want to do that with my kids.
And I'll hit on this in a little bit. There are wounds that we carry from childhood that many of us just became adults and we're like, we don't even know they're there. Now, I boil them down to 7 core wounds. And for me, and again, many adults, it's like, I don't have that wound, you know, like nobody even says the word wound. But I can help adults see it and how they function in their daily life as an adult. And that's a good example of, if you felt blamed a lot as a kid because of mistakes weren't mistakes as a kid, they weren't, teachable moments, or if you were criticized a lot more often than you were praised, that goes a long way in our development. And then we become adults, and it's like the boss calls us into the office, and we can go into panic mode, where it's like, our mind starts going, what'd you do this time? It's no like, hey, maybe they want to give me a raise or something, right? No, it's right to, what'd you do? Yeah, you're in trouble now. You did. Or if your spouse, same thing. If your spouse is angry or upset, right? It's like, we're like, what did I do? Like, how do I like one of my coping mechanisms is humor. I just crack jokes a lot, which is great, and it's fun to be around sometimes, but I also learned that I use it in ways to keep me safe. So if my wife is upset and I'm starting to go into an old belief of, what did I do? This is my fault. Maybe I'm carrying a lot of shame from childhood, because that's what usually happens when we are punished for mistakes, when we're criticized more often than we are told, like any form of praise, is that we harbor shame, meaning like we have the feeling of shame and the belief that something's wrong with me, that, I'm not lovable for who I am, and that shame drives so many of our adult decisions. And we fall into the trap of trying to get it out here, of like, all right, this is going to make me feel loved, or this is going to make me feel capable, or, because we're trying to avoid these core wounds, shame is being one of them. So I like to say old school parenting has its benefits, and then it has its downfall. And then new school parenting, the conscious parenting, has its benefits, and it also has its downfall. So boundaries without connection can create a lot of shame. So we're kind of talking about that now. And that's what happened years ago. Parents, they weren't trying to connect on an emotional level with their child first. They weren't validating a child's emotions. They weren't stepping in to their emotional world. They were setting boundaries. Everything was a teachable, like, don't do this, don't do that, you obey, and you're not going to get punished. I don't want to say every parent, old school parent, I don't want anybody get like defensive over that. But there's a lot of truth to that. There was not a lot of connection done. In fact, so many of the adults I work with now and they can have great jobs, make great money, drive a nice car, house, a beautiful spouse, kids, be doing service work in the community, volunteering, whatever. They're still lacking connection because they never received it as a child. So it's part of those needs that we have to start meeting. For most of us, we need help just uncovering a lot of that because we just try to pile on so that we don't feel it. But the new age, the drawback to that is connection without boundaries. So now it's more about like connecting with our children and getting in their emotional world, but not really holding them accountable or teaching them that, like, you know what you said is disrespectful. You can't talk like that. That actually hurts my feelings. That's going to hurt somebody else's feelings. Or, if siblings are going at it and we step in, we could try to pull one sibling and say, okay, what's going on? And then we get into their emotional world, and then we pull the other sibling and we get into their emotional world, but they're hitting each other and they're trying to get after each other. We still have to teach some form of boundaries when everybody is regulated enough to be able to use those moments to teach. We definitely don't want to do that when the kids are overwhelmed or dysregulated, and then we try to consequence them, or we try to do something in the moment. It just makes them flip out even more. So that's a good one. Boundaries without connection can create shame, but connection without boundaries creates chaos. Kids need us to connect with them. They need it. Right? Now there's so much talk now about attachment theories, and it's extremely helpful when raising children. Children need to attach, securely attach, to parents, to an adult, a caregiver. A lot of times, usually it's mom early on in the early days, but they need that. And then we can go into consequences, disciplining, correcting, teaching, whatever term people want to use. That's up to them. So we help children build emotional vocabulary. Are you frustrated right now? Are you nervous? Are you disappointed? So my son made a mistake in baseball. He got angry and frustrated. And again, like there's this part of me that wants to pull him off to the side and say, don't act like that in front of everybody. Having all this anger, right? In my mind, I'm like, whatever. It's a little kid baseball, not a huge deal. And I want to really talk to him about that. But that's not connecting with him first. That's just going right into some form of, that's my stuff, right? So when we connect with our children first, we open the doorway of actually learning about our children, which is incredible. Because when we got in the car and I started talking to my son about what happened at baseball, and I saw how frustrated and angry he got, and he was able to acknowledge it. And I just said, I went through my checklist of emotions with him, and he said, Dad, I felt embarrassed. So see, if I don't connect with him first, I don't get any of that. I just see his anger. I see it acting out on the baseball field, and I got to put a stop to it as a dad who thinks, he's doing his fatherly duty, right? When in reality, I could be producing more anger in my son if I don't connect with him. And then I get a glimpse into his little world. He's inviting me in when he went past the anger. The anger is sometimes a protective part of ours. Usually it's a secondary emotion, right? It's hiding on top of something else that we don't really want to look at. He voiced it and said, I'm embarrassed. So he was embarrassed with how he felt what happened on the baseball field, maybe in front of me, in front of mom, in front of his buddies on the team. But why this work is so important, it took me from wanting to react and getting angry at his anger to having compassion and being like, I get it, man. That's not a cool feeling to feel embarrassed. So showing a little empathy, but I had to open that door by connecting with him first.
Do you find that, like, I've noticed it, I think, with my older son, like, the best conversations that we have are usually in the car, because you said this goes in the car, or like bedtime. Like, in your line of work, have you noticed a certain like time that's best, like, to have these open kind of conversations, or?
Yeah. So I've heard, and I also, see this in my own house with my wife, is nighttime. Going to bed at night. Because if we think about it on what I talk about, this emotional regulation, nervous system, survival mode, fight or flight, kids are in it, right? They're dealing with so much. As adults, we think we are. Oh, the boss, the deadlines, the financial pressures, everything, prices are rising. Can we keep living here, right? We have our adult stresses, gas prices, whatever it is you want to talk about, right? But so do kids. Fitting in socially, keeping up academically. Nowadays, kids are involved in something every single day of the week.
Yeah.
Everything, whatever it is. It's, they have a tutor one day for math and karate and baseball one night. The list just goes on and on about what we have our kids doing every single night of the week. So I say at nighttime, when the kids are getting ready to go to bed, maybe they took a nice bath or they took a nice hot shower, and they're, for the most part, where we're still at is we still have to, my wife especially still has to be around him. Your guys are still young, 5 and 2, right? So you still probably are still with them when they're going to sleep. They feel safe. They're like, like everything on the outside is. So their whole system starts to shut down, and that's where the vulnerability can come out. Let me tell you what happened today.
Yeah. No, exactly. Even like yesterday, though, in the car, my son, he's going to be going into kindergarten, and all of a sudden we're driving, and just talking about nothing, right? Talking about getting ice cream or doing something, and all of a sudden he's like, I'm nervous about kindergarten.
Wow.
And I took a moment and I was like, okay, yeah, like my parents would be like, you'll be fine. And then in my head, I like took a second, I was like, it's okay to be nervous, like that makes sense. And we were just talking about it, and he even brought up, I was nervous going to pre-K, and look how much I love it. And I'm like, yes. And so, I don't know, we had such a great conversation, but I didn't try to like rush his emotion like you're saying stuff. And I'm finding like what I think you said earlier, just like taking that pause. I don't know if I'm doing good parenting style. I don't really know. Maybe a mix of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's now that he's like at this age, I feel like where he's really more verbal about his emotions. It's just really interesting to be a part of that. But yeah, and then it's like what we're talking about, like you're the role model here. It's like I don't want to mess it up, right? Like not that I feel like he's so.
Yeah.
That was just a little story.
No, that's great. And that's a nice job that you did there, right? Instead of, you compared it to something you received, right, when you were a kid.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. But it was just like, just validating his feelings a bit.
That's right.
Talking about how kindergarten will be. And I think he also expressed that to his teacher too. I think who probably said something similar. So, it just feels really good when they open up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. Well, I mean, kids trust parents so much. First of all, they have to.
Yeah.
Right? And in the infancy stages, the toddler stages, I mean, kids, they're not, they can't just say, I'm out. You guys are driving me nuts. Like, I'm out of here.
1,000 questions about everything. And like, sometimes it's annoying, but it's made me think like, wow, he thinks I'm so smart that I know all the answers,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't, but yeah, no, it is interesting, like how they come to us.
And it's great. At the same time, it makes us realize how much influence we have over them in terms of their brain chemistry, just how they're forming, unintentionally, doing things that we didn't even know could be not validating what's going on, right? So the son's nervous. You're allowing him to say, hey, nervousness is normal. Nervousness is okay. I'm not trying to fix you and say, don't worry about it. You're gonna look at all the friends you made last year. You're gonna make a ton of friends. That's called fixing. Right? Again, it's like trying to pull the kid out from. Instead, you went in and said, no, it's because again, if we're realistic as adults, we get nervous still.
Exactly.
We get angry.
Exactly. I remember that.
So as parents, because a lot of this does fall on us, we have, I believe, a ton of responsibility, and we have so much influence in how a child develops over the years that repair is a necessary step we need to take when we are parenting, because we are imperfect. We are still walking around with a lot of our wounds. I've been doing this healing work the past 4 years on a very deep level, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. I think this is work that goes on for a lifetime. And so I'm aware and accept that because of that, I am going to drop the ball with my son. I am going to not show up sometimes for my wife in ways that she needs me to, or the ways I want to. So repair after, we fall short, after conflict, that goes a long way. One of the healthiest things a parent can say is, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have handled it that way. Especially with how much our kids internalize what we say, our facial expressions, our mood, our energy, our tone of voice. All of this triggers our kids, which just goes to show even more how powerful we are to them. And at the same time, triggering we are for their nervous system when our tone of voice changes, when we show up in front of them standing a little differently. Kids can pick up on, oh, dad's in a good mood right now, or mom feels so nurturing right now. Kids can pick up on that. And when we fall short, hey, buddy, that's on dad. I'm sorry. My anger got the best of me there, and that had nothing to do with you. That's my responsibility to take care of my emotion there. And I didn't do that. I'm going to keep working on it. I'm sorry. And, then see where they're at. They might want to hug it out. They might say, give me space. We don't know. My son's 8.5, so he's a little older. So he's able to say, give me space. And he's not ready yet to just take my apology and then everything is all good and we move on. Sometimes he gets upset by it, and then he'll say, give me some space. But my job as a parent is just to make sure I'm taking that burden off of his shoulders. It's not his responsibility for regulating my emotions. That's my job. As an emotionally mature adult, it's my responsibility to take care of myself before I take it out on him. And if I don't do that, it is going to come out onto him, which is what we don't want as parents, or it comes out as on our spouses as well, right? We take a lot of our anger out on our spouses. Many spouses I deal with, they're decades into resentments. There's just so many resentments hard to even keep up with. And then it's hard to be vulnerable. Right? We need, again, even as in a marriage, you need connection to be, healthy. But how can one spouse be vulnerable if they don't feel safe enough? How can one spouse be vulnerable if the other spouse is constantly reactive or dominating the anger arena, right? They're the only ones who have a ton of anger, or they're the only ones who are overwhelmed in life or stressed out at the job. So the other spouse has to learn to suppress, to not get those needs met. They don't have a person safe enough to go to. And so what we do, and this is where parts work comes in, is we go into our own survival patterns, which is we try to help our system out. So we can even do this with children. Let's say if we're not getting our needs met with a spouse, we can actually take what we're not getting over here, and instead of addressing it because of whatever reason, being vulnerable takes a lot of courage. Again, especially if you don't feel safe enough emotionally, we'll throw ourselves into our children. We'll just take care of them. We'll do everything. We'll run the house. We'll go to work. We'll take care of the everything. And that fills up our gas tank, right? When our kids just look to us and depend on us so much, some of our needs are getting met. I don't have to deal with the problem I have here with the spouse. Hopefully that gets figured out one day, right? We're just hoping that it just goes away, or that they see how annoyed we are enough that they'll start changing on their own or something. Usually none of that works. And the flip side, when we throw ourselves into our children, we're actually using our children to meet our adult needs. And that's where codependency starts. So children that grow up in that type of parenting will then become highly codependent when they get involved in their own relationships. Most of the time, they won't even see it. Most of the time, not even learn how codependent they even are. But again, until they find somebody who's familiar with this line of work, then they can, oh, wow, I didn't know that was codependency. Man, I've been codependent for a long time, Man, that runs deep with me. So it could stem from a parent using children to, same thing with work. If a parent just throws themselves into work, it validates their world. I'm a good person. Look how hard I work. Look at what I'm doing for the company. Look what I'm doing for all these people that rely on the job that I do. Look at all the money I'm making. Look at the vacations I take, or
I think that is a big thing in this area, especially like what you're hitting on, yeah.
Because it doesn't just have to be alcohol and drugs, right? There are ways that society pats us on the back. It's unhealthy. It doesn't develop connection with a spouse and children, but we can get promotions, right? Think about there are four core ways that we try to live life. A lot of people, adults: perfectionism, control, all or nothing thinking, and judgment. Those are our core four. And when you can throw yourself into a job, it kind of alleviates a lot of that. Because I have purpose in life. I have value. That's why some men, actually, when they get to a certain age, they can retire. They have a really hard time retiring. All right. So, time to go.